Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Grantek's webinar on how label verification projects can fail. I'm Dave McKenna, and we're going to get right into it. So first, just a few guidelines and tips about this webinar. I'll change the captions on these to make the same old slide a little more appealing. But please do use the chat. Do ask questions during the presentation as we go. May be able to answer them, may not. Depends on what it is, but it can help us help guide us on making this, help guide me on making this the best webinar, most useful for you. The other one is please do answer the polls. The polls are very helpful for me to know the audience, know what point of label verification journey you're at, where your company is going. Very helpful again to tailor this as much as I can on the fly, kind of for you to get the most out of it. So very quick introduction about myself. My name is Dave McKenna. Been working for 19 years in automation and from Grantek Systems Integration. I'm based out of Toronto. And I joined the label verification line of business that we have in 2021. And I will be brutally honest with you. So I really do believe in vision systems for label verification. I think it is a huge value to manufacturers in food and beverage and pharmaceutical. And I believe in it. It protects the public. It protects the brand. But I'm not naive. I'm aware. My eyes are open to some of the challenges that come on installing these and challenges on maintaining these. And that's really the point of this webinar. We want to share how projects can fail with the industry and with other with peers. So 2 slides only, I promise, on who Grantek is. So Grantek is a system integrator. We do anything and everything in automation. So we'll do things from electrical panels, enclosures, the fuses, the breakers, the design of those enclosures, schematics, up to PLC systems, SCADA systems, HMIs, to communicating with SAP, to dashboarding, Power BI, analytics, anything and everything. And my focus is particularly on label verification, our label verification solution, and also label printer control. So automating and controlling code data equipment across multiple vendors from a common system. And second slide, again, only 2, promised. We have been around since around 1980 and have locations across North America and an office in India as well. So that's kind of about me. So who are you? Who are you? And what is it that you do? So you should see a poll coming up. Yes, you do. Excellent. I see answers coming in. So are you a quality individual? Are you in engineering or capital projects? Are you in operations? Are you a contractor, system integrator, service kind of person in the industry, or you're an other? So we're just going to take a moment or two to let the answers come in. Please do answer so we know who is here. 1 more second, stalling to allow people to click. And I think that's good. So maybe we'll hit the close on that guy. Our results are public. Okay, so you should be able to see those results. So we have a mix, a good broad mix actually, across quality individuals, engineering, capital, operations, and contract. Okay, that's good to see. So here's the agenda. Again, want you to know the point of this webinar. So we're going to talk very briefly on what label verification is. There's other content on that that we've posted before, but so that when we talk about ways it can fail and how it can fail, we want to know what can fail, and that we all have a common idea of what we're talking about for label verification. I'm going to go through some themes of failure that I've seen, and there are definitely patterns and repeated areas of this. So we'll talk about those themes, and then we're going to get to some real details of failures and examples of fails. I'm probably going to put #fails on this webinar so we get a few more clicks on it. And then we don't want to end. I don't want this to be just on a negative kind of downer note. So I do promise there will be sunshine and rainbows after we kind of get through all the failure parts. This is a QR code. You can scan this with your phone or industrial scanner if you've got one at your desk or wherever you are. We're going to talk about what label verification is, but I wanted to point out there is a YouTube video on this. If you go to YouTube and search for Grantek food with cheese, you'll also find this. So use the QR code or search Grantek food with cheese. It's a short cartoon type style with narration on it video that talks about what label verification is. We're not going to go through it too much here, but in short, you're making a food product. It's a cheese food product. Well, it's supposed to go in a package that represents that. And if it goes in the wrong packaging, in this case, it goes into a lactose-free package, someone with an allergy can be injured or worse. You're going to face fines. Your end customers are going to fine you. You have to manage a recall and all the other stuff that happens with that. So if you are looking to learn more about this or share, this is a good one to share across your organization for what you're talking about. What are we talking about when we say label verification? Hopefully you find this useful. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about confirming packaging with automation systems. So that's typically a barcode scanner. It can be a smart camera looking at other aspects or elements of the packaging. We'll probably have some sort of sensor to detect that there's a package there. And there are a variety of configurations of this. So if you're looking at a box, if you're looking at a carton, then you may have something like this where a scanner is reading the side of that carton. If you have a round product on a conveyor and that product can rotate and the label could be in any position because you don't know how many times that jar is going to rotate as it moves down a conveyor, you may need to have an array of cameras. That might be an array of 6, it might be an array of 4, it might be 3, it depends on the application. And typically there's also a reject bin. So if we can't read something because it's flipped or turned or damaged or who knows what, we can't tell what it is, we're going to reject it. If we tell what it is and it's the wrong one, we're going to do a line stop. There's also generally an HMI screen to allow operators to do their changeovers, select what product they're running, deal with any alarms. If it finds the wrong product, to see why it stopped and troubleshoot and diagnostic information as well. So that's what we mean when we say label verification. We're talking about confirming packaging with a machine vision system to make sure we're not putting the wrong product, the right product in the wrong package. And a key point on this label verification, we're talking about multiple labels. Potentially, it's all packaging components that need to be verified. So salad dressing is a great example. Salad dressing typically has a front, a back, and a neck label. Well, you want those all to be the right ones for that particular product that you're producing. And best practice on this is to have a 2D code with a material number on it. That generally lines up with your ERP system with SAP or whatever you're using. That lines up with your quality specs that you have, or bill of materials. It lines up with the pick list that your material handler is going to your warehouse, and it lines up with how your stacks of packaging are kept in inventory. All that could match ideally. And we maintain a bill of materials, so we know for this salad dressing finished good, I expect to see exactly this neck, exactly this front, and exactly this back. And that's best practice. And that's, again, so we're all on the same level set of when we say label verification, what do we mean? And now another poll. So before I get to themes of failure and more details on failure, where is your company on its label verification journey? Not applicable. You're a contractor, integrator, service person. Please do pick that if it's not applicable. Do you have no system and no current plans to do this? You're just looking for some information. Does your company have aspirations and hopes to put something in and maybe thoughts on it, but hasn't done anything yet? Do you have a checkbox system? So by that, I mean a very basic system. Maybe your maintenance people called a distributor and bought something and wired it in. And yeah, it does something. We can say that we did something if regulators come around, but maybe it's not all that good, or there's ways to defeat it, or we're not that confident in it. Or do you have a full system you're happy with and hey, everything's great and well done in that case? So I'll give you another moment. Quite a few service people or NA people, and then kind of a mix across on the others. So that's interesting, a good mix. And yeah, service people are going to say yes. A couple of check boxes. Okay, so themes of failures. Epic fails drive our clicks up. So was very happy with this phrase, coming up with this phrase and talking to a few people who've done tons of installs for us in reviewing this PowerPoint deck and presentation. They kind of supported this as well. A label verification system will test. It's going to test. It's going to test your corporate and plant commitment. Does corporate really want this in? Like really want it in when the rubber hits the road? How committed are they? How committed is your plant to this? It's going to test your manufacturing environment. How challenging is that environment that you're in? And what are the steps that you're going to take to remediate that, or are you not going to take those steps? It's going to test your equipment. How well does your line run now? And if your line has problems now, those don't go away when you add an inspection system on top of it. If anything, it's going to point those out. It's going to shine more sunlight on it, so people notice the line's running poorly or has problems, and maybe those were always there and no one paid attention because there hasn't been a project or no one's done anything new on that line in a while. It's going to show those. So how well does your equipment run now? And it's going to test that. It's going to test your organization, its project management and maintenance capabilities. Can your company run projects well? Does your company know when to do things internally and when not? It's going to test that, and we'll go through some examples of challenges that come from that. So ultimately, your company, its ability to do things and maintain them in the real world with turnover. Now, maybe turnover is going to be a bit less of an issue. Maybe that's slowing down in the next couple of years versus the breakneck pace that it's been at. But there's still always going to be some turnover. How well can you complete projects and maintain them? It's going to test all of those things, and we'll get to kind of the details of each of those going forward. So first case study kind of comment is on commitment. There's a customer, they had eight manufacturing lines, and equipment was installed about 5 years ago, and 2 of those lines are currently still in operation. So not a good number running. And they had a mix of 1D code and 2D code. So some of the packaging had 2D codes added onto the package, and some of it did not, and they were just using the UPC. And that's pretty common. That's not an example of a failure. That's a more normal business practice. It takes time to work through all that packaging stock. It takes time and cost and effort to get graphics updated and to have that approved, and then do a trial necessarily to test new packaging. So that makes sense. But to date, a lot of that packaging has been updated, and they put the 2D code on it, but the system hasn't been modified to say, well, you don't need to scan the 1D anymore. There's now a 2D there, and use it. So a bit of a missed opportunity, this facility, that they could switch to going with more 2Ds because they have them now. So that's a small one compared to a bigger missed opportunity. There's cameras missing. There's water damage. There's water inside some of the enclosures. There's a cracked touchscreen. And this stood out particularly. At this facility, the quality department had some new packaging. They were updating a product, and they did not know what to put into the 2D code. And there was no budget to remediate that. An executive, so this is at the corporate level, says, do we need this system? So large install, significant money had been spent putting all this in on multiple lines years ago. And now it's been the lack of commitment. This is how far it can take you, where the quality department doesn't even know what to put in the code. They don't even know what this system is really, or how it works at all. So it can get that far from, we're committed, we're installing it. Well, if you don't maintain that commitment afterwards, this is kind of how far you can get, where 2 out of 8 are running and people don't even really know what it does or how it works or what to put in the barcodes. Commitment. Second example of commitment, this is a food customer in a wet environment, and they hated the label verification system. They were mandated to put it in by corporate. They hated it, and they did not want any impact to production. They bypassed the verification system as soon as they could if there was any issue. And then corporate was very firm in this particular example, and they said, you need to have this on. This is our policy. This is part of our QMS. You need this when you're running, and it's not optional to have inspection on packaging. So about 1.5 years after the install, the system had heavily degraded. There were some damaged photo eyes. There were cameras that weren't aligned. There was some PLC code that had been altered by the plant. And so we had a remediation project with this plant. We went in, we centerlined everything, and really worked. And this is a philosophy we have on this. We work with the site. We want the site to be able to maintain things on their own. We want them to do troubleshooting as much as they feel they can do, and we can support sites that they can't do their own troubleshooting or have challenges with their maintenance departments from a staffing standpoint or technology knowledge. We'll support them if they can't, but we want sites to be empowered to do things on their own. And so a site champion really stepped up in this facility, took ownership, started troubleshooting on their own, and the site runs well now. And this is a direct quote, and this is really, we had some really spoke to me about the level of their commitment and the level of turnaround from this facility. Was I approached them about some new reporting. We had created some enhanced reporting, and it gave more detailed information about when the system was being bypassed or not, which shifts were doing that, which lines, which SKUs, allowed you to kind of slice and dice and do analysis, as well as read counts and to see are certain products having more difficulty than others, to really do root cause analysis on where you need to spend your energy to drive improvement. So I was very interested in this, approaching sites about this reporting, and I call this site, and their response was, we don't need it. Who would look at it? And if we're down, we fix things. So we don't really need reports to tell us where our problems are, because if there's a problem, we go out and fix it. And that was very surprising and incredibly. It's one thing to say you're running well; it's another thing to be commitment. But it's this really spoke to me that they were serious and again had turned it around. And then after that, they wanted to add additional equipment that wasn't part of the initial project. So this is an example of a lack of commitment. Again, we see a pattern with the previous facility where a lack of commitment, the system's turned off, and then like anything in manufacturing in hard environments, there's wear and tear on it or damage, and it wasn't maintained. But then again, they turned all that around, and what drove that was corporate commitment driving a plant commitment, which then led to a successful operation. Moving on to environment. So it's going to test your environment, a label verification system. So there are, and I don't need to tell you if you're in one of these facilities, there are some demanding environments in manufacturing. So there's plants with high ambient temperature where if we put a stainless steel enclosure with a camera in it, well, it's kind of turning into an oven for that camera. So there's high temperature, there's steam in facilities. And this is an example on the left. You can see some watermarks in an enclosure from that high temperature steam and some of the issues in that environment. Sometimes there's spacing problems. So if we're inspecting on a conveyor and we're looking at jars, and I have two jars sort of jammed up right next to each other, well, I can't look at the label on that jar because the previous container might be obscuring it. So sometimes you have to handle that. Sometimes there's space constraints. You need to put a reject in. There's not quite room, or the reject's not big enough. Product spillage is another. Sometimes there's the product itself will spill on the packaging, makes it harder to read, makes it harder to print. We've seen jams. Jams is a common one everywhere. Sometimes jams to the point where the product will bridge and then sort of pile up on itself and then even hit the cameras and knock cameras out of position. So there are hard environments, no doubt about it at all. There are hard environments for manufacturing, and these hard environments become hard for label verification systems. And what we've seen is some of these are solvable. These are solvable issues. You can put air conditioners and coolers on enclosures. You can move equipment. You can put in an air knife. You can put in a water knife. There's ways to address some of these. The challenge becomes if they're not. And that's really I'll say a plant decision and a corporate decision on, once these risks are raised, and we do this as part of a preliminary engineering phase, we raise these risks and come up with strategies to address. And sometimes the sites will not want to do that. And some of that's financial. Mostly it is financial. They don't want to spend the money. They think maybe we can get away with it. And sometimes you do, and quite often you don't. So if there's risks that are brought up during the design phase that aren't addressed, then they kind of become issues later. And those are the examples we've seen of that. It's also going to test your organization and your maintenance department and your plant. So we've seen some good examples here of, in the top right, you can actually see an image from a camera, and there's a glove in there. So yeah, if someone's sticking their hand in the machine and clearing a jam, it's not going to read the product if the product's supposed to move across in front of it and it's flipped or turned. That other image in the bottom right, that's a cardboard box in that top left corner. Hopefully this shows right on your screen. That's a cardboard box up here in that corner. And that's, again, supposed to be presented in front of the camera, but instead it kind of rolled through. If the line's not running well, the camera system's not going to run well either. And so some examples, we had a rotary filler, and there's nests that hold the container in it, and a series of them move under the filler and get filled. Well, those nests are supposed to rotate, but a few of them didn't spin. Well, now it's not going to turn the label into the correct. Some of those containers in certain nests will spin the label in front, and some won't. Well, it's not going to read if the label's not turned. If we don't have consistency in the machine, we can't have consistent reading. We've seen boxes flipped over, turned jams. We've seen reject systems, existing reject systems, and we try and reuse reject systems. We don't want to drive increased costs. There's limited space in a plant. So we use an existing reject. Well, how good was that reject anyways? And did anyone know that it had problems? And some of this is just sunlight that comes from a new project being done on the line. There's jams, and transfer points are another problem. So If there's different conveyor sections and we're not smoothly transferring, then we're going to have variable timing as that product moves in front of the camera. Maybe it waits and it's stuck, and then it will bump, and maybe we don't have the correct gapping then. So those transfer points can cause an issue. We've seen print head issues. So this is more for label verification, extending a bit further with that. So most of the time, label verification, we're scanning the packaging, and it's pre-printed barcodes, it's pre-printed cartons, it's pre-printed film or wrap, and it has that barcode on it. Some customers, some more advanced customers, are printing on the packaging, and they're printing 2D codes with lot number, expiration, some of that other information. And how good's your print? What's your print quality? Are you cleaning your printer as well? You may not notice that if maybe you're not even looking at it, number one. Maybe you are looking at it, but it's human readable. Barcodes need a little higher print quality than human readable. There's lots of really poor quality printers that you can read it, but again, if it's printing a barcode, the barcode scanner may not. Cameras triggered off mechanical cam. This was one facility where a cam, it's turning, and we have a photo eye with that, and that we use that for timing to tell when there's a product in the filler. Well, that cam broke at a plant, and the line still ran. That piece of cam, or however it did break, wasn't affecting the equipment from running, but a piece of the line broke. We used that to trigger our cameras. Plant didn't fix it. Well, this is really an example of commitment, but we're not gonna have a successful LV system. But ultimately, a question on all this, or discussion point, if the LV system does a line stop from jams or line issues, is that really the LV system that's failing? People will blame it or say it's not reliable, it doesn't run well. Well, if your line's not running well, or something breaks on your line that we're using to trigger, is that really the LV system failing, or is it just you're not maintaining your equipment, and then that echoes into the LV system's performance? And kind of the last case study, then we'll flip to something a little more positive, is the commitment across the organization and how well your organization can handle packaging. So there's sites that we see that have pattern matching. So pattern matching this is an example of pattern matching up here. If you can't put a 2D barcode for various reasons, or you don't have one yet, you can use pattern matching to identify what packaging you're looking at. So this is an example of peanut butter Grantek bites, our delicious brand of crackers that we produce. Peanut butter Grantek bites. We've trained on the shape of the lettering peanut butter. The camera doesn't know that it says peanut butter. It just knows I am looking for this shape of these letter outlines. And then when a different product runs by, that's why it's red. I'm not seeing that pattern that I was looking for. Pattern matching can cause issues at sites, and it comes down to, and this is why we're cautious. We will train facilities on how to do this on their own. We're cautious with that, and we tell plants, be careful. Is this something you want your maintenance team to do? Are they doing it enough that they maintain competency in it? Because if you train on the wrong thing, then it's going to let the wrong package go through. So for example, instead of training on peanut butter, if I trained on the pattern Grantek, great, it found it. Well, now I put this label in front of it, and that label has the same Grantek, so it lets it go through. And I've heard of examples at facilities where they trained the pattern on the customer's logo, not on something unique and distinct to that piece of packaging. They trained it on the logo. So you could put any label through there, and it's going to improve it. Now, maybe that's a maintenance person making a mistake. Maybe it's, I fixed it, everyone. I made the line run better. You did make it run better, but you've now defeated the system. Hard to say, but we have seen issues with plants on pattern matching and their ability to maintain that and support that. We've seen marketing remove the 2D code, which was incredibly surprising to me, that you would have a company-wide commitment to food safety, to label verification, and then install all this equipment across all these facilities, and then someone in marketing can say, well, take that out, or we're going to move the UPC. And some of this stuff has to happen. We do need marketing people. They make webinars and wonderful YouTube videos. And they sell the product, which nothing happens if you don't sell the product. But there's a communication on there of what's the real impact if you do take that code off. Do you have to take that code off? And if you're going to take that code off, well, now someone needs to approve a bunch of money to add additional cameras or do something else so we can still inspect that product. So this really gets to change management and how well your organization can handle change. We've seen products come to a plant from another facility. They got transferred new products. Well, maybe they're a different shape or size, and now the cameras are out of focus. So again, there's steps to managing all this and managing change after these systems have been installed. Much like anything else, if you have a packaging machine and you get a new product that you want to run through and it's a different size, there's work to make that go. We got a new SKU, but it wasn't added to the system, so the operators bypassed it. And that kind of ties to commitment of plants that don't have someone that's paying attention to this or minding it. And then it didn't work. Well, it's not going to work if you don't set it up for that new SKU. We've seen scanners replaced with an exposure set wrong. That's kind of maintenance support and maintenance knowledge. We've seen customers purchase a hardware. So this is more not so much maintenance after, but for installation. Some customers do not. So Grantek can do turnkey, or we cannot do turnkey, and there's various ways to slice and dice that. And some customers, with their procurement group and so on, they want to purchase some of the hardware. Some of them want to do the construction management of subcontractors. They want to hire the subcontractors. The challenge becomes, and where we've seen failure on projects, is they want to do these things, but the customer does not have the manpower or staff to do it, or they don't have the knowledge to do it. And maybe they're in a high turnover environment too, which doesn't help on any of this. So we've seen them buy the wrong hardware, and kind of us have to try to work around to remediate that. We've seen them plan for construction management, and then a couple of people left, and now there's no one to do it. And so they engage us to do it, but that wasn't budgeted for in the project. So again, how well is your organization committed to this and marketing, even from the marketing, packaging, design, and in the manufacturing operations engineering space as well, and quality? And does your company know what it's good at and what it can and should do and is great at doing and capable of doing, and what maybe they're not, and they'll need that done. So kind of summarizing some takeaways on this commitment, and it does, like said that word probably too many times during all this, but that is a really key piece in all this. Do you maintain your equipment? How is your equipment maintained? Are problems on the system being addressed? Is there a champion who's kind of going after this? Or no, it didn't work, so it broke, so we didn't fix it, and then it didn't work. A label verification won't magically fix the line if it's broken to begin with. And again, knowing what your organization is capable of and not. And so next poll, again, looking to kind of hear from you folks on what is your biggest challenge? Corporate commitment, plant level commitment, the environment, the line, temperatures, pressures, could be people factors in the line, organization, maintenance, project management, your procurement, your ability of your company to execute a project. What is your biggest challenge? And I see 0 answers, so I think our poll is malfunctioning. One moment. Oh, lagging poll, hold on. Okay, I think there we go. Now we're seeing results, perfect, thank you. Corporate commitment coming in. I'm gonna guess it's a broad mix of things, which has kind of been the theme for all poll questions to date. And I'm gonna wait another moment or 2 or 3. Corporate commitment, interesting. I mean, that's really the starting point for all of this, is that at the executive, where the vision and the leadership, they need to be on board and want to do this. Then that drives plant commitment. Then that drives solving these other issues like your line and working in that environment and managing it. Okay. Excellent. So we're gonna kind of pause for a moment. There was a lot of doom and gloom. So we'll just take a deep breath, have a moment of intermission here. And then I did promise sunshine and rainbows. And in generating this PowerPoint, I did learn a new item in PowerPoint, how to create a rainbow fill on something. So if you're interested, I did include this graphic: format, shape, gradient fill, and then you can add gradient stops: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Away you go. And kidding aside, I'm going to go through some counterpoints to the doom and gloom, because it's not all doom and gloom. There are sunshine, and there is sunshine, and there are rainbows. And many applications are straightforward. I did not use the word easy on purpose, and I put quotes. Many things are straightforward. If you have a box or a carton that you're reading, that's a simpler application. And yes, there's going to be jams and things that are flipped and poor print qualities, but those are, again, not specific to the LV system. And lots of lines run really well all the time. Those cartons are just flying through, and those can work. And we get really high read rates on those. We get really high read rates on many applications, not just a box. Maybe it's a roll of film inside a filler or wrapper, and we're inspecting that roll before product gets put in it and sealed in that film or wrap. And the 2D code is near a registration mark on the film, and away you go. It just runs all day long. So there's lots of applications that are straightforward. If you have the expertise, if you've done a lot of these installs, and we have, they can be done. These are problems that have been solved. And harder applications, we can talk about harder applications for a moment. Well, harder applications are only they're just harder. So maybe that does mean you need to move some equipment because there's product spillage nearby. Maybe that means you need an air knife. Maybe that means you need something else. So those are solvable problems. Maybe you have a gapping issue on that conveyor. Well, you can put in conveyors that will speed up, and it's going to separate the product apart. So there's ways of solving these issues. They do cost money to do this. They can take up space some of the time. So they're solvable. And a key piece that we've seen, and we've been engaging a lot more with clients on this too, is on the commitment side and how to make that more successful and make the long-term success of these projects better, is on supporting champions. And we really encourage a series of presentations and calls that we do with customers on having a champion, why we think it's important to have a champion, who that person could be, what sort of things they need to do, how they stop issues. And we encourage plants to do this and corporate to do this, and we encourage them to mean it. So that means some support for that person. If that person's going to be the champion, send them into some of the training as we install a system. Let them be part of the commissioning, perhaps reporting, perhaps video training, perhaps other documentation, other material to support that person. And if there is a breakdown on the line or some of the equipment, support that champion with maintenance addressing issues that come on it. Another opportunity, and this is something we do for our own personnel to address some of these challenges and to help with systems in the long run. We're not seeing as much of a drive with many customers, is monitoring the systems. So we have, for our own purposes, we put in some analytics. We use Power BI on this. If we're engaged on a remediation work for a line, for an older line, we'll come in. We use Power BI. We can compare years worth of data and drill into it and see, are there certain trends? Did it get worse in a certain year? What happened? Are there certain products or SKUs? How well is one line performing versus another? This kind of sets the tone for an on-site assessment and investigation of older equipment. It's not everything. You need to go there and look at it. You're not going to see that touchscreen is scratched from a Power BI report or touchscreen is damaged. But it is a starting point to kind of guide some of the on-site activities that we do in plants that struggle. And this, to me, is a highly underused resource by customers. And some of the challenge that on this is there seems to be, in many large companies, there's a really lean corporate level, extremely lean corporate level, and then the funding, financial resources, and personnel and so on is really at the plant level, and responsibilities at the plant level. And that's a trend that we see across a lot of companies. The downside of that is you're not as able to put in some of the better reporting KPIs comparison across facilities that a corporate level kind of could ask for and get and do. And comparing back to some of my career experience in earlier days as part of ERP rollouts I was on and other big corporate company-wide changes that happened across companies, some of the most successful I saw was after they installed a new business system or change or quality system, there were scorecards. There were analytics tools similar to Power BI that would let you compare facilities. They got red, yellow, green. And someone was kind of looking at that, and not just to go beat down on the plants that were having trouble, but to identify areas and lines in plants that were having trouble and then give them extra support and resources to try to address that. So that's something that I think is it's a way to address some of this. It's a way to address if you have corporate commitment, but your plant commitment is kind of slipping or not there. It's that you can catch that. And the earlier you catch that, and the earlier that you kind of come in to help, and hi, we're from corporate, we're here to help. I know everyone loves to hear that, but the sooner you can have that moment, the better and the cheaper it's ultimately going to be, and there'll be less degradation kind of in the system. So I want to close with something. This is a little off topic, but I want you to take this message away from this webinar. I know we've talked about a lot of doom and gloom, but I was in a food plant, spent months there as part of a large project rollout. And in the cafeteria, they had a TV up in the screen, up in the corner, and that's pretty common. You'll see TVs in cafeterias. And it would rotate through information about the plant. It would rotate through personal milestones. Someone hit 25 years service, or someone's retirement party was next Wednesday, or some safety information would come up. There'd be various things, social events being advertised. And then they would show the lottery numbers. And I couldn't understand why they would show the lottery numbers. And I spoke to the HR manager at the plant, and he had one word for me: hope. And I want you to leave this webinar with a message of hope. These systems can be installed. They have been installed. They can be maintained. They can be successful. But there's things that you need for that to happen. And number one is commitment. Nothing else starts or goes anywhere or is successful in the long run without commitment. And not everything is hard. There's a lot of doom and gloom in this. I went through a lot of hard examples. Not everything is hard. But sometimes hard things are hard. So there are some hard things, and you want to have your eyes open on those. And that's part of our project approach, is we do preliminary engineering phase, where we identify those, identify the risks, identify remediation. But not everything is hard. Hard things are hard. And I'm going to say customization is best practice. And this is really ties to addressing, in my mind, this ties to addressing a lot of the issues that we talked about. When you can take an established system, as we do, and it's established system, it's established set of software, electrical design, code, business practices, project management approach. We can take that, but then customize that for your plant, for your people, customized training material, customized approach to commissioning the project, implementing it. When we can customize the equipment for your plant, then it really fits the best. And it's the easiest for your facility to maintain in the long run and for your people to be successful with. So that's our approach on this. Is it's a standard offering, which is customizable so that it best fits you and you can keep this running and be successful. So that's the kind of planned delivery portion of the webinar. I'm going to take some questions now and look at the correct screen to read them. So first question, this looks too hard for us. What would you recommend? And I'm going to go back to my many applications are straightforward. So maybe you're jumping the gun on that prematurely. Maybe your application is not super high steam, high pressure, high speed, plant's a mess, new maintenance manager every week. You probably don't have all of those, at least I hope. You don't have all of those things. There are lots of applications that are not extremely hard. And again, there are ways to address them. And that's why again, if you've got the corporate commitment and you can get the plant commitment, then the rest of those things are really a matter of engineering. For the most part, not everything is solvable, but many, many, many things are. There's and a lot of this is not the first time these things have been done. So I would say have hope. And again, this is why we really favor a preliminary, and this is at a modest amount, a preliminary engineering phase, so you can really identify how hard is this going to be for you. But again, you need that commitment to start any of this. Do the cameras make a difference? Which ones do you use? So what's the right, maybe I'll spin that as what's the best camera? What's the right camera? The right camera, the best camera is the best one for the application. We're a big fan of, we use a lot of Cognex equipment, and that's why we use almost exclusively Cognex equipment in label verification. That's because there's a variety of platforms that they have that you can pick the right one kind of for what you're doing. But you can also, there are a few general scanners that will meet a huge variety of needs. So you have things in your toolbox if you need it for something harder, but many applications you can solve with probably 2 or 3 of their devices, and you can kind of standardize on that across your installation. So you're not having to maintain too many spares, too many different versions, too many different hardware, software. You don't want any of that. So again, we're a big Cognex fan, and a lot of Dataman and Insight applications, again, depending on if you can't get those codes on it. What are the costs to address these mechanical issues or tough environments? So that's very variable. And that's kind of again, that's why there's this real design. You need design to do that. Do you need any of it? Or you need gapping fixed, or you need a reject. What kind of reject do you want to put in? You want to put in a air reject with a blow off, or you want to put in a mechanical reject? Well, your mechanical reject's going to need to have guarding all around it. So there is variation in the cost to address some of these environmental issues and mechanical items and so on. And there's variation in the variation. So again, I talked about reject. Well, you want mechanical or you want to blow off? There's a significant cost difference between those two even. So it really does need design work to be done. And then that can kind of create a budget number and kind of go from there. Question: define false versus legitimate no reads. That's an interesting one. So a no read is when a package goes by, you have your barcode scanner looking at your box, and a package goes by and you couldn't read the barcode. And you're going to have those potentially. There's a series of reasons that those can happen. Maybe someone's bumped the camera or moved it or turned it. Maybe the lenses is damaged. Maybe someone spilled something on it. Maybe the unfortunately, rarely, but maybe your packaging vendor didn't print properly, or other could be the source. So there are some that come from, I'm going to say, a false. I don't quite understand the term you're asking for, false versus legitimate. If you've got a jam or something like that, I would, is that really the camera's fault for not reading that? Not so much. It's sort of your line in your environment system. If it goes by and everything's lined up and that camera can't pick it, then yeah, it shouldn't be doing that. And that's not really something that happens. So I don't know if I've quite answered the question, but you're going to have some because of there's no way any camera could read it because it's turned or flipped or something. And there's going to be issues where, yeah, it should have read it. And that just doesn't happen if you've got everything set up again and you've maintained it. I think maintenance is another piece in this. Will you be emailing a link to listen to the recorded webcast? Yes. So all registered attendees will get an email and there'll be a recording of today's webinar. The site that doesn't know what the barcodes are for, can they recover? So that's an interesting one. And I think, again, we have hope. I think if there's corporate commitment, if corporate commitment comes back, because there's not corporate commitment right now, then yeah, that can get turned around. I mean, we looked at a different facility that wasn't as kind of far into trouble. Another facility still knew what it was all for and how it worked. But yeah, I think they could. Now it's going to take money. It's going to take money to do that, to replace damaged hardware, retrain people, and establish that. And we've taken some. I think we have some improvements on this. So some of this comes with, we encourage companies to get a SharePoint site specifically for label verification. We do stuff with video training, and that material lives forever. And if you can, as a vendor, to be able to consolidate all our information on a client's SharePoint in one spot, I think is really, it's valuable. It's easy, it makes things easier for us, but it's valuable for the customer. That stuff's all maintained in a library and it lives forever. And you're not unable to find training material because it was in someone's inbox, item number 1 out of 10,000, and then that person quit, and now no one can find anything, and away you go, and now you're stuck, right? So we have some steps that we go through with customers to try to improve the institutionalizing the knowledge on all the equipment that we put in. But yeah, I think they can turn it around. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take time, and there's going to be definitely a cost kind of associated with it. I think we can get funding, but the issue management raised is around lack of space in our plant. How do you deal with this? And space is a problem in almost everywhere. Many facilities have space constraints, space problems. And this is a key. I'll say this ties back to our customization. So our approach is we don't have a catalog number and we'll ship you a conveyor with 3 cameras on it and you plug it in. I don't think that's the right approach for manufacturing companies. That eats up space. It's hard to get space. You have no space. And again, that's not, there's a value in customizing on the placement. So our approach is to mount it on your existing line. We mount our equipment on existing lines. We use existing rejects. Maybe we have to add a reject if we need one and there's not one there. But by mounting it on the line, you're not burning up space. And space is such a hard thing to come by. So why tie up space when you don't have to? And that's part of, again, we can customize it and put it on your line. Why aren't companies using monitoring? I struggle with this one. And again, I think it's to this, it seems to be this prevailing management kind of philosophy that you run lean on corporate and you fund the sites. And I get there's value in funding being at a closer level to where the work is being done on things. But there's pieces you miss that would fit across everyone, and the monitoring would fit across 20 sites or 30 or 40 sites. But I don't quite know why it's not, to be honest. I don't know if it's I struggle with that one, and I'm sorry, I don't really have a good answer on that. But to me, it really cries out for that. But doesn't customization drive increased cost? So it can, and I'll kind of have two answers to that. It can sometimes. And our approach on and philosophy on this is not everything should be customized. Customized doesn't mean it's the first time you've done it. I think that's where costs go up. If it's the first time this has ever been done, yeah, it's going to cost a bunch more. If it's and there's greater risk on a project being done if it's the first time this is being done. And our philosophy is we customize to clients, but the bulk of the design, the bulk of the equipment and the system is not customized. This is something that's been used across hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines. And now we're just kind of doing that final 10 or 20% adjustment to make this really fit into your line and be customized for your equipment and customized for your people. And so there's a lot of value that comes from that. But yes, the bulk of it is reusable engineering, reusable design. And we've seen that be successful. And that's there any more? No, my technical support is saying there are no more. So thank you for attending. If you do have any questions about this, definitely email info@grantek.com. Everyone that did attend, again, you will be receiving a copy of this webinar and a link to view the recording. And thank you very much.